Hi everyone, as we are having a very pleasant summer period up here in the northernmost parts of Europe. It's been like that all of June and now the first days of July here in Stockholm, Sweden. In other parts of the world, I'm thinking of the northwestern parts of the United States and the westernmost parts of Canada. They've had a mind-blowing extreme heat wave. I'm sure you all heard about it and read about it. And I am rarely impressed by reports of extreme weather because they're either, for the most part, either misinterpreted in some way or exaggerated, or both of the above. But this time, I mean, there was nothing to say. It was just mind-blowing. It was biblical. You know, records were shattered by a margin that simply never happens. Temperature records primarily in central British Columbia, Canada, they were shattered by a margin of between 5 and 10 degrees Celsius, which is between 10 and 20 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, that never happens. If there is a heat record somewhere, the old record is broken by a margin of a couple of points perhaps, or maybe 1 degree Celsius, or in the extreme cases 2 degrees Celsius. But here we're talking about, my God, and you know, the absolute temperatures, they were on a level that it's really incomprehensible that they happen in that part of the world. The top recording was in a little village called Lytton, British Columbia. And it's been reported that they had 49.6 degrees Celsius, 49.6. Now there's a debate as to whether this temperature might have been a little bit too high, so it could be 1 degree lower. But it doesn't matter. If it's 48.6, it's warmer than it has ever been in Europe. A higher temperature than has ever been recorded in the whole of Europe. And I'm talking about Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, all those countries never reported such a high temperature. And the same with South America. Never reported such a high temperature in the whole of South America. So this is extreme. This is happening above the 48th, 49th parallel, even the 50th parallel. We're talking about latitudes like Paris, Europe, Munich, Frankfurt, even Moscow. And then, of course, the discussion about climate change immediately started, which is completely natural. It's good. It should happen. I mean, why not? These are the kinds of events that have been discussed are going to happen more often. And I mean, I can't say that that's not the case, that we will experience these kinds of events more often. But I would just like to put this into some kind of perspective anyway. I mean, it is a humbling event, no question about it. But I don't think many people out there actually put it in perspective. I think everything should be put into perspective if possible. And so I will just try to do that. So there are a couple of things that come to mind, a couple of questions, a couple of issues here. Number one has to realize that this is a very, very rare and very specific meteorological phenomenon. It is very specific. It's this so-called heat dome, as they are talking about. I don't know enough about it to talk about the details, and we don't have time to go into the details about it, but basically it's about a warm air mass coming from the Pacific, the western parts of the Pacific, and traveling all the way over to the western parts of North America and settling down there, and being basically trapped by a very powerful high pressure or a high pressure ridge that has established itself there. And this entails, when this warm air mass lands there and becomes a part of this high pressure, the whole system reinforces itself. It reinduces the heat. So the heat intensifies day by day, and eventually it's effectively blocking every attempt from any low pressure to enter the area, which would relieve the heat. But so that doesn't happen. They have to just go around if there are any approaching. So that's the heat dome. So it's very rare. And would it have happened without global warming? Definitely. It has happened. We just don't know exactly when it happened in this intense a way. as was the case right now. It might have happened. I mean, some experts are talking about this kind of event happening every few hundred years or so. So that's a definite yes to that question. Then the question is, did global warming make this event, this heat wave, more intense than it would otherwise have been? Probably. And does global warming, the global warming that has occurred, make these kinds of events more common? Possibly. So the answer to that question is possibly, it's not probably. The mere fact that the temperature records were broken, shattered by such an enormous margin, tells me that this event could not have happened simply because the warming that has occurred so far on the planet. So there are only two reliable measurements if you want to understand clearly what is happening with the climate on the planet, and that is trends and averages. Trends and averages. Averages are very, very important to look at, to understand what is happening. And never go by anecdotal evidence. Never go by circumstantial evidence. There is an allure, of course, to journalists, for instance, to write about single events, extreme events, as evidence of something, in this case, climate change and global warming. But the reliable measurements are trends and averages. And interestingly enough, and I'm not saying this just to take the whole thing down, because as I said, this heat wave is humbling, and it might be an example of what we are going to experience more of in the future. I don't know. I can't say for sure that it isn't. But interestingly enough, just to put it into perspective, we are now in a period of about half a year now where the globe is affected by another meteorological phenomenon called La Nina, which normally means that the average temperature on the planet is kept down a little. And this we have seen during the spring months here, including June. It hasn't been cold or anything like that, but it's been less warm than it was the year before and the year before that, and especially less warm than during the spike year of 2016. And so it's been, like I've just read today, the latest report from the satellite records telling that in the month of June, the global temperature was slightly below average since satellite records began in 1979. So slightly below average, which is interesting. Most of the months it's above. But in this month of June, when this episode happened, the global average was a little bit below. The United States had a very warm June. The month of June 2021 in the United States was the warmest ever recorded. But at the same time, I mean, this is the satellite record, talking about that now, all the time here. At the same time, the continent of Antarctica registered its second coldest June since these records began. So, I mean, it's complicated, and the Earth is big. But, again, a humbling event and very interesting. But I always think it's a good idea to get a perspective on things. And also here in Stockholm, June was the warmest June recorded in Stockholm. It tied with the warmest June that has been recorded in the country of Sweden as well. And interestingly enough, that other month that it tied with was registered in the 18th century. No, sorry, the 19th century. Have a nice week now. Enjoy it and have a look at this.